Good afternoon and welcome to today's virtual program. My name is Devin Malone and I'm the Director of Public Programs and Community Engagement at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. I'm so excited to welcome you to today's program commemorating the 50-year anniversary of the groundbreaking fashion show, Battle of Versailles. You'll hear from the iconic Black models who brought the designs of Halston and Stephen Burrows to life and learn more about the far-reaching impact of this historic fashion show. To share more about today's speakers, Jennifer Brice, a pioneering force in fashion, gained prominence in 1972 by winning the Model of the Year pageant, propelling her into New York City's fashion scene. Renowned designers like Oscar de la Renta and Stephen Burrows recognized her talent, and adorning her in creations by Halston, Valentino, and more. Jennifer made history at the Battle of Versailles runway. Her enduring legacy of breaking barriers and embracing diversity continues to inspire and reshape the fashion landscape. Pat Cleveland has been an international top model for over 5 decades. She has worked for the most prestigious fashion designers such as Halston, Valentino, Stephen Burrows, and Armani. Pat has been seen in fashion publications such as Vogue, Ebony, Women's Wear Daily, Essence, W Magazine, and Interview. She has also been painted by Salvador Dali and worked with Andy Warhol. Pat has received many awards for her work and has recently received the Thurgood Marshall Award as a fashion icon. She is also an author, singer, and artist. Norma Jean Darden is a model and entrepreneur. Throughout her modeling career, Darden graced the pages of fashion magazines such as Bazaar, Glamour, Mademoiselle, and Vogue. Darden later opened her first restaurant in New York City's Harlem neighborhood called Spoon Bread Incorporated, which specialized in Southern cuisine. In 1997, Darden opened 2 more restaurants with Miss Mamie Spoon Bread 2 and Miss Maud Spoon Bread 2 restaurants, both in Manhattan. Darden's restaurants have been featured in publications as diverse as the New York Times, USA Today, Black Enterprise, Essence, and Ebony magazines. Sol Leao, today's moderator and guest curator, has been hailed as an icon of Harlem and Harlem's heart and soul. An acclaimed creative, curator, and impresario, consultant, and muse, he seamlessly merges the worlds of art, fashion, literature, media, and music to document and amplify the stories of the emerging and underrepresented via exhibitions, events, and writing. Please join me in welcoming today's speakers, and thanks again for joining us.
Hi, I'm Solio, your guest curator and moderator for today's talk. I'm so excited to have this talk, and I want to start by giving just some history and some background. So, on November 28, 1973, the historic fashion show Battle of Versailles forever changed the fashion industry. So, exactly how did this all come about, you may be wondering? Well, at the time, the Palace of Versailles was in need of restoration. American fashion publicist Eleanor Lambert and Palace of Versailles curator Gerald Vanderkemp decided to host a fashion show to raise funds and publicity. The fundraiser was presented in the media as a battle, with 5 French designers facing off against 5 American designers. The French designers were Yves Saint Laurent, Pierre Cardin, Emmanuel Ongaro, Hubert Givenchy, and Marc Bohan of Christian Dior. The American designers were Bill Blass, Halston, Oscar de la Renta, Anne Klein, and Stephen Burrows. At the time, Paris was considered the height of fashion, the capital of the world, and American designers were deemed too commercial and unsophisticated to create haute couture. In their presentation, the Americans featured clothes that were modern and sleek, and they had scene-stealing performances from Black models that helped herald a new era within the fashion world. Although the American designers were considered the underdogs, they won the battle and gained respect on the international fashion scene. 10 of those 36 American models were Black and included Billy Blair, Beth Ann Hardison, Pat Cleveland, Amina Wasuma, Charlene Dash, Ramona Saunders, Norma Jean Darden, Barbara Jackson, Alva Chen, and Jennifer Brice. During this discussion, we will talk to 3 of those models who made history 50 years ago. We will discuss the historic show, how it advanced themes of diversity and inclusivity within the fashion industry, and explore its influence decades later. And now, please welcome our Battle of Versailles models, Jennifer Brice, Pat Cleveland, and Norma Jean Darden. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
You all look amazing and beautiful, and thank you so much for making time to celebrate this momentous anniversary. You ready to dive in? So I want to start with, when we think of models, we think of someone who can represent a designer and their creations in the best light. And so going into the Battle of Versailles, how did you deal with the weight of responsibility to represent not just a designer, but the entire American fashion industry? And we can start with you, Norma.
Well, I didn't go in there with that idea at all. I just went in there because it was a job and it was and it was a weekend in Paris. Who could turn that down? And of course, we didn't know the repercussions at all. And we went in just to do our job and what we do and what we had been doing on 7th Avenue as we danced and pranced on the runways here.
Now, at some point, was there, because it started off as a charity, right? And so at some point, as a fundraiser, at some point there was in the media that there was this battle. So at what point did you become aware that this was like a battle between designers and it was really important for the American designers to make a mark? When did you get a sense of that? And I guess I can ask you, Pat.
Oh, battle?
Oh.
You know, love is a battle. Loving is a battle. We went to love them, not battle them. Somebody said, oh, Battle of Versailles. Had nothing to do with that. It was a love story. We offered them a bouquet of beauty. They embraced us and made it known that we were just the love they were waiting for. I'm telling you, it was a love story, not a battle. So we have to wipe it out.
So you don't like the Battle of Versailles term?
No, we're not killers or warriors. We're warriors of love, of course, but not that sort of, a hard, separation, divide. Because in the art world, we're all one person. We are all trying to create beauty. And we went there to show our beauty. And because there were girls that had never been seen, the girl from 7th Avenue, all of us girls from 7th Avenue had no lick of a chance of going to the Palace of Versailles, except for these designers who had invited us. And we were chosen because we worked on 7th Avenue in the houses of the couture American designers. And they chose us because we were the best walkers. And the best walk is a corral of girls who can present clothes with a soul atmosphere in their heart and spirit is what we gave them. And they embraced us. It was not a battle at all. It was a love story.
And how about you, Jennifer? When you went, Jennifer, were you aware of the pressure that the American designers were under to sort of represent the best of American fashion on this large international stage?
All I knew that this lady was the editor of the Washington Post. She was a fashion editor. Her name was Nina High. And she was such a wonderful person. And she fell in love with me and I fell in love with her. And she took me right to Stephen Burrows and Oscar de la Renta. And I think they fell in love with me because they loved Nina High, but they showed me a lot of love. And Stephen said that he had to take me and I had to be voted in by the other designers. So they accepted me and I was so thrilled, but I wasn't as thrilled as my mother-in-law and as my mother was. I was so happy to go, but I was a little sad because I was young and I was so in love with my husband. And I just cried the most of the time while I was there because I just missed him. But now I could care less about him. Anyway, and then when I saw all the beautiful models, Pat Cleveland, Norma, it was just so wonderful. It was just, I had never thought that I would get a chance to see these models. So, and to work with them and to go to Paris. So it was kind of a different, I had only been in New York in October and I left in November to go to Paris. And I was thrilled, but then I was a little sad. But I was still just so amazed that I was working with all these beautiful models that I would always see in the magazine. It was like, to me, walking in storybook land in a castle with all these beautiful models.
I
The
love it.
designers as well, but you know, when you look at the magazines and you live in a little country hick town, you mainly focus on the models. So I
Yeah,
was Pat Cleveland, Norma Jean Dodson. I was just, and a lot of other names, Karen
a
Beyonce, and
lot
I.
of them. Mhm.
Yes.
And speaking of the models, a lot of what helped the Americans, stand out was the movement and the personality that you each exuded on the one-way. Because in contrast, the French had a more sort of regimented and conservative one-way style. So what was the environment like in the industry at that time that allowed for the models to be so free in their movement and expression? And I'll start with you, Norma, again.
Well, the thing is, we came out of the 60s models who were very stiff. You had your shoes to match your gloves, your pocketbook to match your hat. You had a suit and you were bandbox all the time. But then along came the hippies, along came the love revolution, along came the music changed, and the whole attitude of people changed. And so did the fashion industry. So we were free to dance and romp and roll on the stage and to do our thing. And that was part of the times pushing fashion in a new direction. Also, fashion had been kind of a class thing. You could tell who had money, who was poor by what they wore. There was a total flattening of that because dungarees came in, blue jeans, and torn ones at that. So there was no more class distinction in clothes, and I think that's what came out of Versailles too.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat, you are known for your amazing movement and fluidity on the one-way. And I remember you telling a story about how you were spinning and spinning on the stage of Versailles, almost to the edge, and the audience gasped. So for you, what was the environment like at that time that encouraged the models to be so free?
Well, my sister models and I already had these routines we worked out. And before we went to Versailles, we had rehearsals with Kay Thompson and Liza Minnelli. And I was living in Paris and I flew back to America because I wanted to dance. I wanted to be a part of that celebration. And we rehearsed for about 2 weeks, a dance number with Liza. We're going to step out on the Champs-Élysées. We were the showgirls in the back, and we all had these wonderful outfits that matched. I think Stephen made all the outfits with little sailor hats. And when we got to a certain point, the thing is that we had a dance routine. And when we got there, we girls, Norma, Jennifer, and a couple of the other girls from 7th Avenue already knew how to do walking routines. So we were like dancers on the runway, like Norma said. We were used to moving, whereas in Paris, we were a more austere and a classic, silent show, a house of designers, walking with a number in silence, only showing to ladies of society. And as Norma had mentioned, yes, fashion was flattened out in the way that, everyone was equal. There was an equality. And for Black girls in Paris, since Josephine Baker, there had not been that thing. And so when the girls came over from 7th Avenue, all this color and movement, it was shocking. And well, I lost the idea of the question, but anyway, the mind is still working.
You did.
The joy.
It did shock the French. It did shock the French. You're absolutely right, Ms. Pat Cleveland.
Exactly. No, you were right on the money. So, and this next question, I want to have you, Jennifer, started off, but today we talk a lot about the term Black joy as an act of expression that challenges oppressive forces and allows us to connect with our humanity. And to me, this show and what you all did was the epitome of like Black joy and freedom. So Jennifer, I'm curious, were you conscious of the statement you were making as a Black woman on that stage, displaying such freedom and joy and beauty?
No, I wasn't. I must say, like I said, I was still just so overjoyed to be with Norma Jean, Pat Cleveland. I was kind of in the kid head. So whatever they did, if they were walking fancy, I tried to walk fancy with them. So I must say it was, to me, a model after the supermodels to me.
Mm.
But I enjoyed it.
How about you, Norma?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I want you to finish your thought.
And if I had to do it over again, I hear some negative stuff, I would still go and be cold and hungry and do it. It was a very, very, very special time for me in my life, especially since I left the business and went on home to total motherhood, PTA meetings and field trips and making lunches. And it just was a great, great, great highlight for my life. And I'm very pleased to be among such grand, elegant women and the great designers as well.
Of course.
And thank you for inviting me tonight.
Of course, couldn't have done it without you. And how about you? Were you aware, Norma, of the statement you all were making as Black women on that stage?
No,
Or did it come
it's
later?
doing our thing that we've been doing and been doing it for a long while. I was particularly happy to be in Stephen's section and had a dress with a train that was so long. And it took me forever to get there and for my train to follow me. And all of a sudden they started stamping and hollering and throwing their programs in the air. And we just never had a reception quite like that. And it edged us on, and we had great music. We had hot buttered soul and all kinds of music that we were dancing to in discos, and it was a disco time.
Yes.
And we were having freedom and fun, and no, we weren't aware of anything historic. Right. It was just our thing. And Jennifer was my roommate, and she was so sweet and lovely. And we were just having a good time among ourselves, but we were having a terrible time in that place. It was cold and drafty, and we lived outside of Paris, so you couldn't go roaming, and they kind of neglected to feed us, so it was kind of hard times as a job goes. So we didn't have time to think about anything but our circumstances and doing the best job that we could, because when we got there, Joe Eula had made all these fancy backdrops for us, and the stage was so big that they didn't make sense. And we had no backdrop, and Kay Thompson, the choreographer, quit, and things were going downhill. So we just had to pick up ourselves, pick up our spirits, and hit it.
Well, can I intervene here?
Yes,
you know,
please.
About being Black in America, it's not the easiest history to maintain your dignity, because, you know, we've had so much slavery and hatred, arrows thrown at us, that when we were in France, we were embraced, you know, in a way that we had deserved to be embraced. And we had kind of hit the glass ceiling in America, because at that time, there were no magazines other than Ebony for women of color for fashion. And the great Eunice Johnson was the woman who brought fashion to all of American society. Ebony was the Bible of America. And the fact that Black girls had nowhere to go any further, because at the time, you either were in a magazine or you were in a show, and there was no combination. And to be invited to represent America as a Black woman, I can tell you, you know, you carry your whole nation behind you, a whole nation of people who've suffered. For you to stand on that stage and represent something beautiful, to me, it was a tribal achievement of Black women being at the very height of society, along with royals and people, you know, of wealth. And there, you know, it was just an equal ground, because in our world of fashion, everyone is equal according to how you dress, actually. And we were dressed to the nines. We were dressed so splendidly. We were presented in the best possible way. We were the Black women presented to Europe wearing the most beautiful clothes by the best designers. And we were like Christmas coming in to gift them with beauty that they had not seen. And so for me, it was a statement, really, even though representing America was girls of the rainbow colors, all colors. We had from the lightest to the darkest shades. But for women of color who were darker and had not had the opportunity to be recognized as beautiful, when we arrived in Versailles, people were embracing us in a way that we had not even received in our own country. And that was the change. That was the international door opening. And our feet, we were graced like we were walking on a red carpet after that. People looked at us and loved us and gave us that feeling that we were dignified and we were precious. And it made a great difference to so many girls. I mean, representing, beauty.
And that was my next question. I'm glad you made that point because, prior to the show, you had, Black models making waves, such as Luna, Naomi Sims, and Beverly Johnson, beautifying the covers of major magazines. And
well, that came later. Beverly came later, but first was Daniel Luna and Naomi Sims. We have to talk about Naomi Sims. She worked for Halston. And
we can go back much further than that. The first group of Black models to go to Paris went with Ophelia DeVore and Grace Del Marco, and they embraced totally. There were 6 of them, and Lejeune Huntley became Miss Collins. That was in Paris back in the 50s. And even before then, Dorothea Tolles went to Paris and made a huge hit. So Black people have been accepted in Paris for many years before we got there.
Yeah, because they inspired Picasso and all the artists and, Yves Saint Laurent, all the designers, they were taking from that culture. So it was representing the African culture, in American style. Freedom, America, freedom.
Yes, and the battle is credited with helping to usher in another golden era for Black models during the 70s and early 80s. So after the event, how did each of you see the industry change for Black models immediately following the battle?
Well, the wonderful thing about Paris was they had kind of ignored their models from Gabon and from Senegal and Martinique and Guadeloupe, and those girls really didn't have a chance. But after we were there, the African models stepped up and they got a foothold there, and really beautiful Black models came to New York and they got a chance. So I thought that was quite wonderful.
It was like a new color was invented on the palette of art.
How about yourself, Jennifer? Did you find any observations, any changes in the industry following the Battle of Versailles? Did you have a sense of the impact it made afterwards?
Not for all these years. And actually, CBS was the only TV station that covered it. So when we got back, not too many people knew about it. So it's taken all these years for it to take its place in history.
That's 50 years. Half a century.
Yes.
Well, when I returned back, I found that I had changed agencies. I started off with Wilhelmina, and I went on over to the Ford agency, and I found that when I went there, I started doing 17 magazine and Glamour, Mademoiselle, and everybody in my hometown was excited about the magazines. But I was more thankful for doing the shows on 7th Avenue because it was more fun to me. And to see Pat parade up and down and Norma Jean to come back so elegantly.
Yeah, we were moving clothes. We were showing how they could be worn. And the girls from 7th Avenue is the big thing.
They were more alive to me.
Yeah, lively experience, music, movement, being close to the designers. And the comradeship of having friends.
Amen. And also they paid better too on 7th Avenue.
Yeah.
Was you really got your hourly rate better than the magazine. But I did find that I enjoyed doing both, but I enjoyed mostly when I did 7th Avenue.
Right.
There you go. The girls from 7th Avenue.
Yes. And they were all so nice to me and protective. I just loved it.
I'm sorry, Norma, you wanted to say something?
I'm sorry, Norma.
That's okay. I wanted to say that we were blessed because there were 4 great Black designers who were very popular at the time. There was Scott Merrill, there was John Haggins, Willie Smith,
Smith and
and
Stephen.
Stephen. And they all used us and pushed us, and that was great impetus when we got back. And before we left, in fact.
And then came out a nice magazine called Essence, where people had suddenly their own magazine.
A woman, a magazine for Black women.
Exactly.
Yes.
There was Ebony Essence.
So I want to ask you, because you have the Battle of Versailles, you have this golden era, and then the momentum sort of fizzles, right? And so I was curious, why do you think this momentum wasn't sustained within the fashion industry in terms of embracing Black models on a wider scale?
Because that's the fickle finger of fashion. Fashion comes, fashion goes. And the next thing we knew, the Mediterranean models were in fashion. And then there was this push toward Chinese, and then that's how fashion works.
It's all political, darling. Wherever the audience buys, that's what the trend is. And it just seemed that the music was making the Black girls more popular because it was R&B and James Brown, and everybody wanted to get in on the feeling of it, you know? So it was very popular, and then came disco, and it sort of faded out and then went to another direction. And
what's interesting about your story is that you started your own agency at a point.
Yeah.
And so what I like about that story, and what I want to ask you was, you know, often we hear that we need to be in positions of power in decision-making areas. And so I think you starting your own agency was sort of a step in that direction. So, you know, any insight you have from the business side of things in terms of why the momentum wasn't sustained, I think is really critical.
Well, you have to be very honest. You know, business is money, money is time, and trend is what's in. You know, like when Russia opened up, at my agency, we had all Russian girls. When Africa opened up, as far as politics and selling clothes, and, you know, it depends on where the newest mall is or the newest business is selling to. Those are the trend of the girls. So it's very trendy, as Norma said. The trend comes in, the trend goes out, but you have, you know, but you always, the funny thing is that there's always only one Black girl in a show, or no Black girls in the show. If that season it's like they're selling to Russia, right? Or if that season they're selling to Africa, then it's all going to be African girls. And American girls are always interjected in there anyway, but there's a star power system, you know? And I opened an agency because I was working with Italian girls that were not getting paid well. So I felt they were my friends, and I opened the agency for them. And then I had Tara Banks and Naomi Sims and Kimura, and I had a whole bunch of girls that were Brice. I had a whole bunch of girls that came into Europe from America, African-American girls. And so I pushed them out front that they would have the opportunity to meet all of these designers and work. So I had the agency for 20 years, and I taught modeling, and I had some really good girls. And it worked out that people trusted me because I had experience, and I had a good eye, and I was always looking for someone to give them a chance, you know? I think the heart of fashion is to give people a chance, really. You know, new designers, give them a chance. New models, give them a chance, you know? And it all depends on the economy and things. Business is like that. Business is about time and money. And that's why you have 100 girls on this stage. In our day, when Norman, Brice, and Jennifer and I and the other girls would do 7th Avenue, we'd have like 20 outfits to change into within an hour. You know, our shows were longer, actually. We would have an hour and a half show. Now the shows are like 20 minutes. So a girl only gets one outfit, but we had like 30 outfits. When we were in Europe, we would do 5 shows a day with 30 outfits a show. Okay, these were really the corral of girls that were like athletes, and they could do shows and punch it out like 7 days a week, 5 shows a day, 30 outfits a show. You remember Norma Jean?
I do indeed.
You remember? Yes. You know, and Jennifer was off doing beauty pictures and things like that, but she did the stuff. You do remember that, right?
Yes, I remember. I wasn't a strong work like you two, but I remember. Thank you.
Very strong. So, having an agency is training people to be strong and giving them an idea of how to survive. It's all about survival,
It is,
how to be
yeah.
strong. And, I think very young girls at the time would come into the agency and I'd have to send them home because they get caught up in a world they had nothing, they were not prepared for. So we were mature women, we were mature, and it all starts with how you're brought up. What your mama said. Really.
Well, I wanna pivot a little bit, just a few facts. So according to the fashionsspot.com, the spring 2022 shows, which New York, London, Milan, and Paris were the most racially diverse season on record, with 48% being models of color. So I'm curious, for each of you, when you look at today's model landscape, do you feel as if we are in a golden era again? Or are there still a lot of lessons that need to be learned?
Well, I think Beth Ann Hardison had a lot of courageousness about her. Like, she was at Versailles with us, but she was there as a dresser, and she was chosen to model. And she took that moment and used it to help other people. So I think a lot has to do with her helping to pivot around, internationally, and help people recognize the potential of girls having opportunity. She gave opportunity to a lot of girls, which she pointed. She would say, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not fair. You need to put more girls of color in your show." And because of her, a lot of things changed, And of course, Norma, it's just like we keep cheering for our girls and keep hoping to see more, and people word of mouth, like, "Oh, where are the girls of color? Where are the girls of color?" And you go to a show and you want to see that movement and that fairness. And now we are expecting it. It's our right. We earned it. Why can't it,
And Norma,
I'm very encouraged when I look at television, because I was also a commercial actress. And you can't see a commercial now that doesn't have diversity. And in the day, there were no Black people in commercials. That was a strong fight just to get in. They would tell you, we're New Yorkers and we believe in having integration, but we have to appease our Southern friends. And now no one is appeasing anybody. Everybody's out there, and the commercials are so free and wonderful. And
all sizes, all colors, all shapes, all thoughts. Yeah. Everybody is allowed to be 100% beautifully themselves and expressive. And we want to continue to blossom in this way. That's art. That's expansion.
How about you, Jennifer? When you look at today's model landscape, do you feel as if we're in a golden era?
I feel that with the era that we're in now, it's like, I agree with Pat and I agree with Norma. It's more of a carefree beauty, flowing, all different sizes and different races, and it's more of a universal flow, like compared to where it's just one Black. They fit us in with a lot of other races. You see a few of us rather than just one.
Yeah, and that was something I was wondering, because the Battle of Versailles is often discussed in terms of expanding diversity in terms of race, but do you think the show also helped push diversity in other areas such as size and age and disability, because we see a lot of that kind of diversity on the runways now as well?
No, that was not Versailles at all.
You don't think it had an impact in those
Versailles was very restricted. It was a restricted time still. There was not a person like, I work sometimes on the runway with girls who have the tie on the legs that are made of metal, and they run down the runway. They say to me, "What am I going to do?" I said, "Just run out there, girl, and show them you can do it," and they run, and they had those titanium legs. I said, "Just don't step on my toe." That titanium foot of yours. And there's girls of, like, we had the large size models. Well, I just think it's important to everyone to know who they are, the self, the beautiful self. Yeah. We are trying to teach people to find a beautiful self through fashion, you know, to be able to expressing yourself through the colors you wear or the feeling you have about, you know, putting on your war paint or feeling like, you know, giving yourself courage, you know, through directly creating beauty. Just women want to flower and blossom and be beautiful because that's why we were put here, to attract the bumblebee, you know, the bumblebee of life, to continue beauty with all the
And
tragedies.
Stephen was so good with that. Stephen had big people, short and thin, tall and big.
Had asked.
Yes, right.
She was
And
the first big model. Remember her? She did
yeah,
Halston, she did Stephen. She was everyone's muse.
you're right. And I think the
I
designer
remember her.
ushered that in.
Sorry?
Jennifer, you said something?
Yes, I remember her. She did Halston, she did Stephen. It was just so good to see someone else that was the size of my mother, because she liked fashion, but she was a larger lady. So it just made my mother and her friends, the church ladies, very happy.
Yes, indeed.
And you know, we've covered a lot about how the historic event impacted the world at large, but I'm curious for each of you, how did it impact your own personal development, who you are as a person? I guess we can start with you, Jennifer. What impact did it make on who you are today?
Thank you for calling me first, but don't forget, I reflect off them, but I tell you. But
Just moonbeam.
Yes, keep it moving. What changed me and helped me about when I returned home, I had never really been anywhere other than Washington, D.C. and New Jersey. And then when I went to New York, I met all the beautiful people. So I was just on tippy toes, and everyone was so asking me about Paris. And I kept telling them I didn't get to see that much, but I did the greatest show in the world to me. And they were so happy. And I was happy. So I must say it brought some joy. What's that song by Stevie Wonder? It put some joy inside my soul, my tears. I still, when I see Versailles or see the models, or just one of their names, I just be so thankful because of the fact that it was such a beautiful time for me to tell my children, a Black girl like me, to go to Paris and the Castle of Versailles, and that was some beautiful landmark for a person of my background.
It sounds like it was a confidence booster for you. It gave you, it empowered you. Yeah.
Thank you. It empowered me.
I love
and
that.
It was a confident builder. And my husband, who I was married to at that time, he was nice, but after I went to Paris, he was nicer.
He was nice.
Yes. So
in what way was he nicer?
Well, he always bought flowers once a month. But after I went to Paris, he brought them home every Friday, and he was just bought me shoes. He was just Cinderella. Because I was at a castle. Nobody in my neighborhood ever went to a castle. So I was like his Cinderella. He started buying me shoes once a month. And then my mother, she was always, I was her only child. And she always liked to brag about she was the one that got me into modeling, and I was the model because of her. And she always, I went to Paris, she would say, that was, of all the things I ever did in the modeling industry, I went to Paris and did the Versailles show. That meant so much to the people on my side, and especially in my family. I did a few little covers here and there, and I did some magazines, but that Versailles show with Pat Cleveland and with Norma Jean and Alva Chin, because those were the models that people in my neighborhood saw, because they bought the Washington Post. And Nina Hyde, she always was there on 7th Avenue and taking photos of the girls that did 7th Avenue. So they didn't know their names until actually they started seeing their picture more, but they knew that look.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's great. How about you, Norma Jean Darden? How did it impact your personal development?
Quite a lot. I went to the buffet, and the most beautiful food I ever saw
That's so
out on the
nice.
buffet. And it was so thrilling. And then the editor of Vogue asked me what was my background, and I told her that my grandfather had been born a slave, and we were in a little town called Wilson, North Carolina. And she said, out of the blue, well, you must have a wonderful cookbook.
Mhm.
And when I came back,
Nice.
my sister and I wrote a cookbook called Spoon
Beautiful.
Strawberry Wine. And after I did that, we opened a little catering company. And then that grew, and we opened a restaurant. So my
Mhm.
path in life changed.
Wow. So it opened a whole other career pathway for you.
Yes.
Exactly. And I'm still here. This is my 26th anniversary of
Amen.
having spoon-bred Miss Mamie in New York City, and you must come visit us.
Yes. I
Lovely.
shall. We will.
We will. And how about you, Pat? How did it impact your personal development?
Well, right now, it's taking me all over the world because I have, told this story in this book of mine called Walking with the
Beautiful.
Muses, and it's
Yeah.
my autobiography. And in it, I talk about Versailles. But for me, telling the story of Versailles to students, I just feel like hearts are opening, and I feel like I'm living with young people, hearing stories that they haven't heard that might inspire them. So when I go to talk at the universities, I tell them about Versailles and the girls and the designers, and then that kind of gives them a story that actually did happen. It's not just a myth. There's a real person who actually was there. So I feel I'm giving them a little spark, and that makes me happy now.
I love it. Continuing to inspire. So at this point, we want to do some quick rapid fire responses. So I'm going to ask the team to pull up our slideshow, and we're going to show a few images, and
Mhm.
I just want to get some responses. So I'll direct them to each person. So let's go to the next slide.
Oh,
And
good.
you just want to say, what's the first thought that comes to mind? So this
Such
image here,
elegance.
this is the theater at the Palace of Versailles. So we'll start with you, Jennifer. What's
Elegant.
the first thought that comes to mind when you see this image?
Total royalty, total elegance, just grand. I just love it that I was there.
Next, Norma.
I remember Nuria dancing, and he did a leap that almost took him to the balcony.
Oh my
And it
God.
was just stunning. And of course, I remember Josephine, and the crowd still loved her so much. And
Yes.
remember Grace Kelly being there, and all of the Europeans, and how quickly they embraced us. The minute we started our show, they were on their feet, cheering, yelling. It was just magnificent. That whole thing lit up with just love and appreciation for our designers and for us.
And Pat, the first thought that comes to mind.
Blackout. I didn't see anybody in that audience when I was on that stage. I was too busy twirling and doing my thing, except when I almost fell off at the edge and I heard everybody go like that. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm on the edge of the stage twirling. I better go back the other way. But then I was also wondering, who was sitting? Where were the designers? They were all sitting out front with everybody, and we didn't have them backstage, and we need help. But now I look at this picture and I recognize who was sitting with whom, and well, half those people aren't on the planet anymore. Oh my God, jewels and all, couldn't keep them here. But anyway.
Next slide.
Ooh,
Oh, so
Sure.
Norma, let's here you are. And Jennifer, this is you in this image, right, as well?
No, I'm
no,
not.
No, it's not. Okay,
that's
okay. I wanted to make sure.
Amina.
Got it. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. So, Norma, what comes to mind when you see this?
Just the whole group and the dance and the style and the wonderfulness of the whole evening.
Yes.
Love it. Next slide. Norma,
All
this is you
right, Norm.
again.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
my goodness.
fabulous.
I can't even see it.
You can't see it?
No.
Oh, okay.
You're dressed in
My
Stephen
glasses on.
Burrows.
You
Thank
look
you.
wonderful.
And you
Super.
have
Oh, thank
a
you.
flowing butterfly chiffon, a long train dress that we were talking about.
Oh, great. I
You're
have a picture
gliding
of it
across
in
the
my
stage.
bedroom.
And your face is divine. You look so beautiful.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Just Jennifer.
Jennifer, what comes to mind?
To me, I look like a sack of potatoes.
Oh, don't say that. You look
Thank
so
you.
elegant and so
Thank
beautiful.
you. I appreciate you. But my children always laugh at me because I'll be laughing at my pictures and say, "Oh, look at that clown." But thank you, though. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Thank you.
But that is Anne Klein. That's when she did the exotic
Oh, I
thing
love
for
Anne
all the girls
Klein.
from Jamaica. Remember, you were like very essential to that look.
Thank you.
I
Anne
think you
Klein
were one of
was-
her favorites, actually.
Yes, you know, I have a story on Anne Klein. I was sitting
You should
down.
say it. Mhm.
Oh, let's
Yes,
hear it.
and I was watching you all model. You all were beautiful. And I was sitting in the audience, right? And Anne Klein, she was sitting in the audience. It wasn't my time to be on stage. And she came up to me. I was sitting on the other side, and I had stopped before I came to the airport and went to, they had a Salvation Army place on 7th Avenue. And back then I wore jeans. I was kind of tomboyish and khakis and stuff. And I got this little khaki navy-like hat. So Anne Klein came over to me and she took my hat off. She said, "Take that hat off. You're hiding your beauty. You don't need that hat." She walked away and took my hat, you all. I said, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." And but all to say, that was the story I had on Anne Klein. Ever since then, I was really very, she and I were very close from then on. But she never gave me my hat back, though.
Oh, no.
She loved you.
Thank you.
And at that time, Donna Karen was her assistant, and Donna Karen was pregnant in Paris.
Yes, she was so nice. I remember Donna Klein very well. I had missed a couple of fittings, and she said, "If you don't get to this fitting, you're gonna make me have this baby." And when I got there, I just rubbed her stomach and stuff and told the baby to stay in here. She was very, very nice too.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Jennifer,
I
Jennifer.
love
look at
him.
Stephen.
That was my first time, thank you, meeting Stephen. Nina Hyde had taken me to him. He had just won, he was the Cody Award.
Mhm.
And I was just tiptoeing, so thrilled. He was just so beautiful.
Mhm.
He was,
Stephen Burrows.
I was just somebody like,
present tense.
yes, just see. I mean, he is just a beautiful soul. Instantly, I fell in love with him.
Mhm.
I thought he was so talented, so colorful, and just, oh, I just loved him. I know Pat Cleveland was his love, but I loved him. That was my second love.
We can share. There's plenty of room, Johnny.
I know, I'm just teasing. But
And
yes,
speaking
this picture has brought me more attention than the magazine covers of me and Stephen together.
Wow. I
And
love this.
especially your hairdo, you know, that little.
Yeah, I love my hair then. Everyone
natural
says,
hair.
yes. See, I wear it now. I've been wearing it like this for 50 years, always just pull back. But I love that hair. Sometimes I think, gee, maybe I should cut my hair. And I said, nah, I didn't got too old. This hair might not grow back. I need
Well, that was a particular look that no one had. That was your
Yes.
look, the cropped hair, and it was beautiful in you because you were
Thank you.
I was
stacking
able
this.
to share with the evening last night with Stephen. He was honored at FIT. He graduated and they gave him a PhD award.
Fantastic.
And everyone spoke so well, and he was interviewed, and it was just a grand evening.
Oh, fantastic.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Laurent, for sharing that with me.
We got two more slides.
I can look up on YouTube. I'm sorry, Deborah.
Yeah. Mhm.
See Stephen's thing you said?
Yes, it was last night at FIT.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide.
Uh-oh.
All right, there she is.
I will tell you about this dress. There's 100 layers of pleated chiffon.
Mhm.
And Halston told me that he wanted me to be a moth. We decided I would be a moth. And the stage was slightly slanted going down. And I went out into the dark and the spotlight, and there was nothing to be seen. And I couldn't feel the floor or anything. And I just took flight, and all the chiffon came up over my head and around my face, and I couldn't see where I was going because I was turning so fast that I'll never forget to be totally enveloped into this chiffon fabric. And that was the moment when I realized the audience was terrified. They were scared to death that I would fall off the stage. That's the outfit that happened.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
And the next slide, our final one. Pat.
Well, if there's any food to be
please,
found, that was it, the baguettes. I think we girls were living on baguettes, and we had to sneak off into the corner quickly and take a bite of whatever we could get. A little glass of water and our little baguette kept us alive for those days when we were in rehearsal backstage. But you could see how that cold marble floor was not very comfortable.
Who is that?
We survived, and we all took care of each other, and there was a kind of
Yes.
sisterhood backstage. And finally, in the end, when they say a battle, yes, we won. We were brave, and we remained. We were beautiful, and we presented ourselves as ladies of fashion, and they embraced us. And
Thank
yeah.
And we can take the slide down now. We have a few audience questions before we wrap up. Thank you for going down memory lane with us. That was really fun. So our first audience question is, what was your favorite style then, and how does it compare with your favorite style now? We can start with you, Jennifer.
Stephen Burrows. I'm still a Stephen Burrows girl. That's why I keep putting my hands down, because normally I kind of started polishing my nails since I gotten older. And I always kept wearing red lipstick and his rainbow clothes. And I said, gee, I wanted to put something on those little fancy. So this is really kind of all I had. But I said, gee, this is not representing Stephen with this black. But he has some nice black stuff too. But I say Stephen, I loved all of them, but Stephen, it was more like fun clothes. And more like, remind me, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make a confession to one of my model friends, Pat Cleveland. I was kind of a stiff type of person. And my husband, my first husband, he always laughed and talked about how Pat was so alive and wonderful and fun. So when I got home after I did the Versailles show, I tried to act like Pat. Oh, yeah. And it was so funny. And floating around and dancing. And he would laugh, and he said, oh, he got that Pat Cleveland personality on. I said, no, I can act like Norma Jean Dodson and be Betty Davis, too. So as I'm saying, I met these people right after high school going into college, so they were a strong influence on me. Thank you for bringing them back in my life.
That's sweet.
And how about you, Norma? What was your favorite type of style back then, and how does it compare with your style now?
Well, it was Stephen Burrows all the way. He was so unique and such a genius. And of course, I loved John Haggins, and that I loved his clothes too, more conservative. And both were needed at different times. And now, of course, I'm mainly shopping and in the kitchen, so I'm very casual in turtlenecks and slacks.
Okay.
And how about you, Pat?
I'd mix and match them all, honey, because I had a lot of designers that I loved. But Stephen was my first big pack them up and travel around the world, 20 dresses in a small suitcase. People adored him, and they copied him a lot too. And my clothes just was set the world on fire. Those little Stephen Burrows silky little matte jersey dresses that you can dance in. Stirred up quite a lot doing the tango. But you know, we had that feeling of dancing in our clothes, and I think he brought it forward. He was the one who freed us from those harsh undergarments and those wonderful dance feelings we got with that lettuce hymn. And of course, our trains, our dragon tails, you know, and the colors, like Jennifer said.
And we have to give a shout out to Deborah Riley Draper, who made the movie and put it all together and put it back out there. And that is why we've suddenly come to the fore, because of Deborah's hard work in doing her film.
Thank you.
Yeah, Deborah Riley Draper, and now
Yes, we love
Antonio
her.
is making movies called The Girl from 7th Avenue, which you should all
Yes.
see, because that's bringing it forward, keeping it going, and 50 years of anniversary. We're out here getting awards for his film, The Girl from 7th Avenue. Deborah Riley Draper. We love
Robin,
these
Yvonne,
filmmakers
Elizabeth.
who make history by telling the story of Versailles. So I hope you get to see our movie, The Girl from 7th Avenue.
Look for it. Well, I think that wraps it up, and no more. Yeah, I think we're good. So I just want to thank you all so much. This was so much fun. It was so inspiring to hear your stories and to reflect on the groundbreaking history that you all made. Thank you so much to our audience, our speakers, and the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco team. Please visit famsf.org for updates on future events, and good night.
Good night.
Oh, thank you. See you later, girls.
Yeah, thank you. See you, Pat.
Okay.
See you.